Welcome, everyone. Can you please take your seats now? We'll get started soon. I'm James McDermott.
I'm Marielle Polsinelli.
And I'm Mickey Walsh. We will be your Masters of Ceremony for the 2017 graduation from Jefferson County Open School.
First, we would like to welcome our distinguished guest, Amanda Stevens, a Jefferson County School Board member. Amanda is also a member of JCOS Choice and Strategic Planning Advisory Committee. She is a Great Education Colorado volunteer and a volunteer tutor at a women's shelter. She has attended various JCOS events like our Night of Exhibitions. Thank you very much for coming and for your continued support of our school. Please stand and be recognized. We would also like to recognize Matt Walsh, the Achievement Director for the Option Schools. Matt has shown tremendous support for the Open School for the past 3 years. Thank you for your support. Please stand and be recognized.
Today we celebrate 42 years of Open School graduates. We welcome many graduates from past years, including some from the very first years of the Open School. We would like to recognize our extended Open School community today. Could all of the alumni please stand? Thank you for joining us and for your continued connection to our program.
We would like to bring your attention to our program, which honors this year's graduates. Along with a photo of each senior, you will find highlights of their accomplishments, a listing of the school trips they participated in, and a description of their 6 extensive, challenging projects, which we call passages. We are proud of their hard work, and today we recognize and celebrate their passion and dedication.
We would also like to extend our appreciation to the graduates, students, parents, and staff members who made today possible. Specifically, we would like to thank our office staff of Gail, Jennifer, Paula, and Sharon, and our custodial crew, Maria, Steve, and Roxy.
And of course, we would like to acknowledge our supportive administrative staff, our principal Scott, and our assistant principals, Melissa and Alicia. We depend on these wonderful people to complete the everyday hard work that makes our school function, including this ceremony. Let's give them all a big hand. Please stand and be ready.
We have many loved ones here, people who have influenced, supported, and inspired us. On behalf of the graduates, we would like to thank our parents, siblings, grandparents, and other supporting family members.
This is also a wonderful time to celebrate our extended family, which reaches far beyond the walls of the schools and spans many localities. This year's graduates have learned about culture and language and history through their studies and travels around the world. Our community has joined together to show solidarity at the Women's March on Washington and in the streets of downtown Denver. We have journeyed through the canyons of Arizona on our great archaeology trip. We have surfed the waves of California, and we have explored the streets of Paris. Some have ventured to the great castles of Germany and done community service on our Redwoods trip.
We are fortunate to know firsthand the splendor of learning outside the classroom. We have lived with Nicaraguan, German, and Japanese families, and in turn, students with Japan have lived with us. Our classroom spans the world, from the Arctic to the tropics.
We are grateful to the people who have educated us and have opened their doors to us. Let us recognize and celebrate the extended world community that has contributed to the growth of today's celebrants.
To begin our program, we would like to welcome Fred Blackburn. For the past 22 years, Fred has guided Open School students into the canyons of the Navajo Nation to discover ruins, rock art, and history of the ancient Pueblo peoples who resided there. Fred has coined the term reverse archaeology, a process where nothing is taken from the alcoves. Instead, everything is extensively documented by the students. This documentation is then correlated with artifacts that have previously been taken from the caves to recreate a sense of what the site once looked like and to better understand the people that once lived there. We are grateful for everything Fred has shared with us. Join us in welcoming our friend, Fred Blackburn.
I've been in front of tough audiences before, but this is going to beat them all, I think. I want to thank Jamin, aka Stephen, because my hearing's going too, for kind of leading the charge to inviting me here. It's a great honor. And we've gone through a lot of thank yous. My first thank you is to the school. But there are several others that got me here and stayed with me through my craziness on the reservation. And that's Pat Sleemers, Jeff Bogart, Bruce Andrews, Dave Harms, and all those diplomas you've given me, and I'm still yet to graduate from the open school. There's some very special acknowledgments that I would like. Jacob Sleemers, who's by far the best partner I've ever worked with. Parents and students and staff of JCOS, even though you have no idea what we do with your vehicles. Chuck and Ann Haskell's. Chuck has been our expedition photographer extraordinaire and shared incredible photography of student staff and what we've done. Vivian Stanley and her family. We conned Vivian into coming up. And if I can get her up here at the end, I intend to. And my wife, Victoria Atkins, who's well noted for her peach cobbler. The important start that I want to do is really to think about Cody Pastore, aka Lady Pasty Hose. How he got that name was Cody could not write, and he filled out his site forms. And one time I thought somebody was drinking with me when I went down and looked at the bottom, and there was a signature that said Lady Pasty Hose. I mean, it was that bad. And the other things is Cody, he liked to eat out of a Dutch oven, so on top of his back he'd always bring a nice steel Dutch oven to cook in. And we had some great meals with him. The best story is kind of like, I don't know how many of you have seen John Wayne in Cowboys, but this was a replica of it. Cody had broken an arm, which was nothing unusual. I mean, he was always the head of the game. And we found a cow in an inscription house who had buried itself in quicksand. And there's plenty of cows on the reservation, but this one here had a calf come up to it. So we spent the afternoon, had big horns, didn't like people. I had a little rope and threw it over the horns and had 3 kids hanging on the end of it and started digging down. And at the very end of that, we found that if we got the cow out, I had to get in front of her, grab her horns, and make her mad enough to suck out of the quicksand, and she did. And she got up and she kind of staggered off with leading her out so she wouldn't get into it again. And crossed the creek, looked back at us, and if you've ever seen a wild cow say thank you, that one did. But those 3 kids, I'd still like to know what happened and what they thought was going on. I just want to urge folks, in this political climate and the depressing atmosphere that we tend to live in now, a lot of kids are giving up hope. Sorry. what I urge all of you to do is ask for help. And it's not just here, it's everywhere. I wasn't going to do this. I'm sorry. But it is bad. It's sad. So when I can focus here, I'm going to go a little further. The school itself, to me, is of why in the hell hasn't somebody picked up and modeled what you do here? Your success rate is phenomenal with all kids, all economic levels. It's one of the few places I could go in with a suitcase full of money and leave it on the dresser and probably find an extra $1 when I came back. The experiential learning passages that you guys do prepare you for life where other schools don't. It requires self-inquiry, motivation, discipline, and the use of your critical thinking skills. The hope for the nation comes from people like you, and many of the graduates have gone there to make a difference. The best thing is we're not dictatorial teachers. We can't be, because those kids will put us right in our place real quick. They're not afraid to question authority, to question what you do, and to provide better answers. So being a teacher as a mentor is the only way to go. This is my security blanket here. This is my journal that I keep with me. It's covered with blood from my last time's adventures. But I want to clarify the archaeology program. It's not about archaeology. It involves archaeology. It involves past and present cultures. But it's based on the documentation of historic inscriptions. Historic inscriptions in many folks' minds is graffiti. What we are allowed to do with your students is make history come alive on the ground in a most unique and preserved area, thanks to the very tight control of the Navajo people. We're able to provide positive interactions in areas that can be very hostile to Anglos, even today. I think the only reason that we have done so well in all our 20-some years on the reservation, we've never had a vehicle vandalized, we've never had any conflicts, because we involve all who come by with what we're doing. And we have a sense of mutual respect between each other, and not a fear of cultural identity. And we don't need to go to India and Pakistan or Russia to have a very foreign country that we don't understand. The reservations are wonderful places. So what I want to do is kind of break down some barriers on what these students, these peers, have accomplished over the last 21 years that we've helped facilitate and mentor. We are the only high school to hold an archaeological permit on the Navajo reservation. That does not mean that we are out there excavating. It means, as part of the qualifiers are, if we interview elders or Navajo people, that we needed that as a guidance. So we achieved that, and year after year, our permits renewed when others never see it. So we have a heavy responsibility to maintain that relationship from here. That in itself is a huge accomplishment. Some of the things that students have helped with and aided on are major historic documents that have never been dealt with. One of them is the transcription of the Journal of Stuart Young. You probably never heard of Stuart Young, but you may have heard of Rainbow Bridge. And he was the photographer that went on that tour for the first, quote unquote, first discovery of Rainbow Bridge in 1909. And I had a student with me, and we found this untranscribed journal in an archive in Flagstaff, Arizona, and transposed it, which made a huge difference in where we're working now. We took a group of students to Ojo Alamo, near Sasabe, Arizona. The Ojo Alamo was significant to the Wetherell family, who are one of the leading people of the Southwest in the discovery and bringing to life the archaeology. They were the discoverers of Mesa Verde, the rediscoverers of Mesa Verde, of Navajo National Monument, of Chaco Canyon. They were all over. And they, in a very Quaker way, made a tremendous impact on the Southwest. But Ojo Alamo was a place that we knew that John Wetherell, during the 1920s, had tried to attempt to settle and have a new trading post. He would take all the way from the Gulf of Mexico and guide people into Mexico. He was never afraid to go into foreign countries because he could deal with all cultures squarely and fairly. The early movies began where we were at. And in Sasabe, they were all Westerns at that time. The movie Sons of My Father by Harold Bellwright was being filmed, while at the same time in Monument Valley, Zane Grey's The Vanishing American was being filmed, and John's wife was making costumes for both, traveling back from Arizona to there. These are histories that are not talked about, not discussed, not involved. And we're getting to go visit those places, and the people welcomed us. And it's a very high-end guiding place where a lot of Emirates and whatnot fly in by helicopter to stay a few days because it's so isolated. We were the only van on the road that wasn't ice. There was migrants being picked up everywhere. So that in itself, and that's been many years ago. The contribution to the research of a book that I published called Cowboys and Cave Dwellers. The kids, Bruce Andrews especially, we discovered the last of Charles McLeod's basket maker excavations in 1890 and documented those and closed out the book that I wrote. We were involved in the inscription documentation at Mesa Verde. This was a cooperative design of inscriptions between the National Park Service and Jefferson County Open School. We pioneered for the Park Service the now standards to document historic inscriptions. It's now in their manuals. That's not a minor accomplishment. And kids were directly involved in that process. We completed 10 years of research in northeast Arizona in the Prairie Rock area. This is one of the most difficult environmental areas that I think any of us have ever been into. To the point that one night Jeff Bogart and I woke up and the winds were lifting us out of a pothole in our sleeping bags. It was an important area for archaeology. Never has been documented since 1929 when Charles Bernheimer explored that area, and in 1930 when archaeologist Earl Morris followed up. And those of you who do not all know Earl Morris, as he was the prototype for Indiana Jones. Out of that research, several of your students chose to pursue it on their own and ended up in the American Museum of Natural History, looking at the artifacts that came from those alcoves. And a good friend of mine back there, Anibal Rodriguez, helped them without hesitation to get into the museum. Some of the difficulties that we've encountered in working in Prairie Rock is that Colorado University at that time did not want high school students in their labs and research centers. And as a result, Jeff Bogart and students figured out a way around it and found more resources than they had. It made a huge difference. I still have yet to complete that writing. A lot of this is on my shoulders that hasn't been done. And the most important contribution that the kids did was one year we went down and our friends and supporters in Culp, Arizona had their house burned down just prior to us being there in the fall. And so we helped them re-mud and fix up a hogan and add a kitchen out to the east. And after that, we had no trouble with the Navajo people anywhere because they knew us as the hogan builders and still do. One of the most major accomplishments, again, directed by students, was as we work in the SAE region near Kayenta, there were two pretty famous archaeologists, an archaeologist and an illustrator named Samuel Guernsey and Alfred Vincent Kidder. The children and the youth keep journals, and if they don't, I don't want to talk to them. And they said, if we journaled, and we know these guys did journals, where are they? Thus began an adventure where the kids organized the entire trip to Cambridge University. We went into the Peabody Museum at Harvard, toured the campus. I can always remember asking those kids about how would you like to go here? Students, I should say, not kids. I said, wouldn't be a problem. It's that innate confidence to make it wherever they're at. But in the process of that, we uncovered journals, 1914 to 1923, based upon the writings and rediscovery and confirmation of the basket maker people, the early part of what are known, you would know more as the cliff dwellers. And we just transcribed over 3 to 4 years, 1,200 pages of transcriptions on their original notes, which had never been done, giving all kinds of insights into Southwest history, archaeological history. The staff, the students had arranged for the staff at the Peabody Museum to locate some of the artifacts that had come from the alcoves that we were searching. And I really truly believe that the staff thought they'd be there about 15 minutes and the kids would be bored. Well, the bell rang and they were still at it. And so the Peabody was very, very good about education. One of the best places I've been for that. The best part of that story is one of the younger students that went with us on that. There's an exhibit there of the ascent of man. And he'd been kind of one of those early male hormonal kind, the whole type. And so I remember Jacob putting him on the end of the ascent of man, and we took the photograph of him all the way up. I don't know whether he ever got that or not. The other thing that the students have done are 3 oral history interviews of people that are now gone. Florence Lister, Fannie Mahan, who was a Ute woman adopted by John Weatherow and had deep, deep history on Navajo Mountain. And Elizabeth Morris, the daughter of Earl Morris, who did those early expeditions. We completed the Inscription House report, which is one of the 3 monuments under Navajo National Monument. And again, we pioneered something here. We had dual permits between Navajo and the National Park Service. Unheard of, because the National Park Service cannot step out those little postage stamp boundaries to do any other research, and we had carte blanche to cover 2 or 3 of some of the most isolated canyons. Our goal was to see if we could confirm or not an inscription that was found there that people believed to have been left by the Spanish in 1661. And we were able to pretty much decide that was an incorrect date. And we did a complete report on that. And one of the things that we have always been insistent on, which is very different than most, is that our reports that we finish are presented to each chapter house by the children at the end of completion. And this story of Inscription House was fantastic, because Jacob and a group of kids brought this huge document on Inscription House to the chapter house. The secretary started reading it, couldn't put it down, and before it was done, the chapter president came out, shook every one of the kids' hands, and presented them with all kinds of food gifts. The unfortunate part of all this is we gain our trust when we're finished with where we work. And we lose about half the story. I haven't solved how to do that, because the Navajo people who have lived there for centuries could have added so much to what we wrote about. We also found in our research the original horse trail to Navajo Mountain, leaving the canyon, because of the inscriptions that we found. One of those inscriptions was written in 1860 and had the word Navajo Expeditions on it. It was way up in the canyon past any documented military interventions during that time period. This is before the long walk history of 1864 to 1868. This resulted in us being able to track out all kinds of information on slave trade, of capture, of the Canby's route and the actual camps they were at. And one of the most interesting side connections was that a friend of mine is Richard Weatherow's grandson, a man who's credited with a lot of making Mesa Verde known. And he married a very fine lady named Marie Garcia from Tome, New Mexico. And in our work, we found out a man's name was Anastasio Garcia. Anastasio Garcia had been on raids against the Navajo because they had stolen 15,000 head of sheep. They had brought many of those sheep back, and he became part of the New Mexico militia, which between the time Spain left and America intervened, they began raiding the Navajo. The short end of the story is that they brought back some Navajo women with them from one of those raids in 1860. And one of those was Marie Garcia's grandmother, great-grandmother. And she had never known that. And last but not least, we need to really celebrate somebody here, and that's Jamin, aka Stephen, whose videography of our trips is exceptional. And those of you who have not seen his abilities to do 3 or 4 minute pieces of video, you better get his autograph now, because it isn't far away. and of course to acknowledge Chuck Haspel's photography. So that's it. So you can thank me for cutting this maybe short. I hated long speeches at commencements, but I hope that I've allowed you some insight into just the archaeology program. And if you look at all the other programs, trips, and service projects that this school provides, you can just add this kind of thing on each tag. So I'm thanking all of you for supporting what we have done for 21 years, 22 years. And I hope you realize the accomplishments here are not minor. They've paved the way in history. So good luck, graduates.
Thank you, Fred, for your extensive support and for the opportunities you have daily provided us over many years. We are very grateful. Before you leave the stage, though, is what this says, so if you want to come back up here. We would like you to join us in inviting other members of the archaeology program to come forward to celebrate special members of the program.
If everyone who has ever participated in our archaeology program would please come up.
Vivian, you're not getting out of it.
We would like to introduce some special guests with us today, which Fred already kind of said. Vivian Stanley traveled from Kayenta, Arizona to celebrate with us today. Vivian and her family have graciously supported us and our program over the many years. She and her family have welcomed us with her hospitality and shared an ongoing relationship which we greatly appreciate. We would like to publicly thank Vivian for supporting us throughout the years. Thank you.
Also in the audience with us today are Chuck and Ann Haspels. Chuck has been our photographer on our trips, and Ann has graciously hosted us at their house. Thank you, Chuck and Ann, for your ongoing support and friendship. Last, but certainly not least, we would like to give a huge thank to Victoria, Fred's wife, for having repeated multitudes invade her house several times a year. Using their house as a staging place has been invaluable. Thank you, Fred and Victoria.
Thank you all again for making the long journey to come here. The time has come for us to introduce Tristan Wolf. Tristan has been at the Open School for 12 years. Many of you may have seen Tristan perform great feats in various JCOS productions, whether it be crawling on his knees as Lord Farquaad, or convincing us in Pippin that he had magic to do with his demonic smile. Another of Tristan's accomplishments includes presenting to NASA scientists as part of the STEM program at Warrantech. This opportunity has opened doors to him for possible engineering internships over the summer. Over the summer, Tristan also plans to travel to Japan and pursue acting opportunities in Los Angeles, where I know from personal experience that he'll do tremendously. Tristan believes that the greatest strength of the Open School is that students have the ability to improve themselves. So please welcome Tristan Wolf.
Thank you, James. I just want to say, I had actually originally planned to recite a parable today. the story of Lord Man, written by Tom Butler. The story details the rise of man's empire, and perhaps more importantly, the prices that were called on him to do so. Obviously, it's kind of a heavy story. It details the issues of overconsumption, overpollution, and perhaps most importantly, overpopulation. I had originally thought that through this parable, I may be able to bring these issues to you, issues that I'm very passionate about, and leave them with you in your thoughts and in your consciousness. But in reflection, I came to realize that this parable did not truly relay the message that I wanted to impart on you today. You see, I have spent the last 12 years of my life at this school, in these halls. And many of those 12 years were spent coming to terms with the 5 tenets of our school, the 5 goals. Each year, I have come to better understand and better appreciate this creed. These 5 goals of the Open School, they challenge each student to widen their consciousness, to help them view the world not only as a setting that surrounds them, but as a global network that they are both a part of, a member in, and a citizen in. These goals help to challenge each graduate. Each graduate of the Open School must learn in themselves what it truly means to be a global citizen. One of the goals of the Open School, the one that has stuck with me more than any other, is to create the world that ought to be. It is in this goal that we find ambition, that we find pursuit, and that we find purpose. Our whole lives at Open, however long that is for each of us, we are taught to pursue change and to create it in ourselves, to look at the world with a critical eye. Now, not necessarily a pessimistic one, but a truthful one. Through this school, we learn to see the world as it is. We learn to see the good parts and we learn to see the bad. And most of all, we are taught that it is our job, our individual drive, to identify the imperfections around us and to take it upon ourselves to right the wrongs. Though it does not take an overly critical eye to see that we are surrounded by imperfection. To recognize that we are living in dark times with countless challenges and difficulties is not exactly a feat of deduction, but simply a fact of life. To know that myself and all of my peers are coming to age in a time where nothing is certain, where so many massive challenges bloom on the horizon. It is a daunting and frightening prospect. Massive issues such as global climate change, nationwide and global overconsumption, and the ever-expanding human population threaten to be not only the most difficult and serious, but the most complex issues ever faced by our species. These issues are in fact so complex that it is very easy for us to feel like we have no effect on them, that we are simply another face in a massive crowd. We may feel that our actions hold no effect or consequence when we view them on such a scale. But it is through the Open School that we learn that this is not true. We may think that our actions can be small and insignificant at times, but we learn here that when change is put into place, everything can be done. And it is from that change that we can right the wrongs of the past. Recognizing that our actions can influence the outcome of the world is the cornerstone of being a global citizen. It is in that recognition of self-potential that we become able to affect the world around us, and then from there, the world at large. This is a skill that Open School teaches, and unfortunately is something that you can find almost nowhere else. This is why the message I want to give to you today is not one filled with dismay or worry over our troubled world and countless problems, but one filled with hope. Though it may be true that we live in a time and a world full of uncertainties, one full of challenge and opposition, one in which global citizens are needed more than ever, we also live in a time where idle hands and idle minds are no longer acceptable, and they will not be treated as such. And as it falls to us, to global citizens, to find a solution to the problems that plague our world. This is why I'm filled with hope. And this is the message I want to share with you today. Open School has never failed to teach a student what it means to be a global citizen. When I look around myself today, I see families, and I see my friends. I see strangers, and I see my peers, but most of all, I see a class, a graduating class and a continuing class of global citizens, of people that value the greater whole, of incredible minds that I would trust with anything because I know that each and every one of them would do absolutely everything to create the world that ought to be. There will always be challenges to face, and we will always need global citizens to face them. I could not be more proud than to stand in front of you today, up here, and to count myself as one of my fellow peers, as one of my fellow graduates, my fellow open schoolers, my fellow global citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Now we will have a speech from Joey Thompson. Joey has experienced many successes and has taken many risks while at the open school. Some of her most valued accomplishments include presenting her logical inquiry passage at our night of exhibitions, leading her wilderness trip, and producing amazing paintings while in New Mexico on the outdoor watercolor trip. She has also been quite a role model in her advising. Joey has been inspired by crime shows to attend Metro for criminal justice. Please welcome Joey.
Okay. All right. So, before I begin, I want to take a quick second to thank my two moms for getting me to where I am today. First, the woman who actually gave birth to me, Wendy, for showing me true strength in times of adversity and pain, and for putting up with the tantrums that I was far too old to be throwing. Second, my advisor and second mom, Jen, who did not give birth to me, but considering how much attitude I've given her over the years, she might as well be my mom at this point. I would not be where I am right now with the support and guidance of both of these incredible women. For weeks, I've been struggling to put together this speech. Typing, deleting, and then retyping the same words over and over again, in an endless cycle most of you know as writer's block. For many years, I've suffered from debilitating perfectionism. On top of that, I was also assigned the daunting task of summarizing the open school in 1,000 words or less. I began putting off writing this speech, procrastinating and delaying further and further until just a couple days ago. That's when I realized that the problem wasn't just trying to find words to describe my experience here. It was the fact that by writing this speech, I was acknowledging that I was leaving this school behind forever. The thought of leaving this home is overwhelming, and even now I feel an ache in my heart. But in reality, I'm not leaving behind the open school. Even though I won't be walking through those doors every day, my advisors, my peers, and my community that I've built around myself will continue to pick me up and support me long after I leave this graduation ceremony today. So in honor of Jefferson County Open School and its deeply profound impact on me, please allow me to read to you my love letter to the open school. Dearest Jefferson County Open School, when I took my first steps into the building 6 years ago, I thought I'd seen it all. Immediately out of kindergarten, I was put into the gifted and talented program at Divinity Elementary. Eventually, my mom pulled me out of school, and I was homeschooled, finally landing back in traditional school in 6th grade, just in time to go to Mount Evans for Outdoor Lab. Having thought that I'd seen all types of education, I felt completely blasé about you. I was a small 12-year-old girl, tiny in both stature and in my impact in school. I was shy and quiet, and avoided anything having to do with conflict or socialization. However, I can safely say that you've changed me for the better, because now I stand here today as the loud, sometimes overly confident, and mostly shameless young woman that this school has helped me become. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy getting to this point. Over the past 6 years, I've experienced my fair share of all-nighters, ugly crying, broken friendships and broken hearts, and even a kidney stone. But I've also experienced some wonderful moments and memories that I'll cherish for the rest of my days. I've made some of the most meaningful and important relationships of my life through you, and I've learned countless lessons throughout my time with you. Not everyone understood you, however. You're extraordinarily unique, and some people have trouble wrapping their mind around concepts that are new to them. I'm going to be honest, Open School. It gets pretty old trying to explain you to family members, coworkers, grocery clerks, and even curious strangers. It's a very real struggle to try and decide whether it's even worth it to explain to your great aunt that no, you don't know if you're getting good grades because you don't get grades at your school. And yes, Aunt Martha, colleges will still accept you if you don't have a GPA. Is it really necessary to go on a long-winded explanation of each passage, transcript, and research paper, or should you just smile politely and nod while your friends from traditional high schools explain how easy their senior year is? I found myself asking these questions a lot at open school. And while I love you for you, acronyms and all, there were lots of times where I just pretended that I went to a traditional high school so I could avoid the confused and uncomfortable questions from hairstylists and random strangers at Home Depot. For that, I apologize. You are beautiful just the way you are at open school. You should never be ashamed of yourself and the weird, intricate details that make you what you are. So thank you, open school, for teaching me the importance of bonding over a fire in the freezing wilderness, and for the ability and strength to laugh at myself. Thank you for teaching me how to use my pain to heal myself, and for teaching me to love everyone around me unconditionally. Most importantly, thank you for teaching me to love myself unconditionally. Because of you, I stand here today. You forced me to face my fears, and because of you, I've done some truly beautiful things. My first class as a 7th grader was public speaking with Victoria. Something inside me called to it. I was scared out of my mind, and I knew absolutely no one, but the little voice inside me whispered to do it anyways. You fostered that little voice inside me. Because of it, and because of you, I did so many incredible things I never would have done otherwise. I led my advising wilderness trip, even though the outdoors and I don't have the best relationship with each other. I was the junior MC at graduation last year, despite my social anxiety and extreme stage fright. And here I am again, showing for the final time at this school that just because something's scary does not mean it's impossible. And don't worry, open school, because I'll be back. Because even when things get hard, I know you'll always be there for me. You were with me through heartbreak and loss and some of the darkest points of my life. You've always got my back, open school. And when life gets hard and I have no one to turn to, I know I don't have to look far and you'll be there. It hurts. I have no words to explain the pain of leaving you today, but I leave with the knowledge that I've become a better person because of you, and that the world is a little less scary knowing you'll still be here waiting for me. As the iconic and ever inspirational line goes in Total Eclipse of the Heart, every now and then I fall apart, and I need you now tonight, and I need you more than ever. Love always, Joey.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joey. Now we will hear a speech from Sharon Fetter. Sharon's father and uncle graduated from Lakewood High School in the 1950s, the original building where JCOS is now located. Her father and uncle took apart a car and put it back together on the roof of the school for a senior prank. Sorry, that's just so ridiculous to me. Sharon is an amazing artist and heard about the open school from another artist she was working with at the time. At that time, open school had more students on the wait list than there were in school, but she still decided to enroll her oldest son, Sean, anyway. A magical set of circumstances occurred that opened up